Welcome to episode 391, where I'm speaking with my client, Julie, about her lifetime journey with yoga and her recent introduction to Ayurveda and her experience on the Digestive Reset Cleanse. She talks about life transitions and particularly the transition into the vata stage of life. So please stay tuned. Hi there, I'm your host Colette, and on this podcast I will be sharing the teachings of Ayurveda, yoga, and holistic health practices. Now, if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend checking out the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. Thanks for listening, and now here's a new episode. Hello and welcome back to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. Today I'm very happy to welcome Julie to the podcast. She has just actually gone through the group Digestive Reset Cleanse, and she has kindly come on today to share her story with us. Julie, it's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you.
Thanks, Colette.
So, Julie, let's start by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, I live in Australia. I live in a small rural village with my husband, and it's in the state of Victoria, which is the southern part of Australia. I've been practicing yoga since I was a teenager. And now I teach yoga in my local community. And I discovered Ayurveda, I think, primarily through my yoga practice. I was interested in how it complemented what I do in yoga. Mm-hmm. I'm now semi-retired, so I guess I'm in that vata third stage of my life. I am was a high school biology teacher. So I've always been really interested in the human body, health and well-being. And in trying to maintain my own health and that of my family. And I guess my big goal in life now is to age gracefully.
Beautiful, wonderful goal. And Ayurveda gives so many guidelines, not only in this vata stage of life, but also throughout our life to make sure that we have longevity and most importantly, vitality as we age. So I want to come back to that because I guess that's a really important point. But before we go there, I want to talk about, you hinted there that your yoga journey started extremely early. You said as a teenager, and that's how you discovered Ayurveda. Tell us a little more about that, please.
Well, I was a very stressed out teenager in my final year of high school, and my mum practiced yoga and went to a local community yoga school. And so I remember partway through the course, one day we were there at the end of the session and I was lying in yoga nidra, and I had this out of body experience. I was like up at the ceiling looking down on my own body, and then the yoga nidra finished and it was sort of back into my own body. And it kind of must have deeply affected me. I wasn't freaked out or anything by it, but and I had certainly enjoyed the yoga classes, but it just gave me an insight into the fact that there's a lot more to yoga than the exercises, the breathing and the relaxation. There's this esoteric something else going. And I guess that's what made me hooked. And I found yoga through university when I got married and moved towards the edge of Melbourne, which is the town that I grew up in, the major city of Victoria. I found a wonderful yoga teacher and got involved in her school. She asked me after I'd been there a few years if I'd like to teach the beginner yoga classes in her school. And so she trained me up and I did. But the thing that she also offered was meditation and yoga philosophy classes, which I really, really loved. And then as time went on, I became pregnant, and then I moved into the area that we are in at the moment, which we've gone from the city to the country. And it was a massive move. I went from being a full-time teacher up until about 3 weeks before I had my baby. We've moved from city to country, so employed to not really employed, being a full-time mum. And although it was absolutely wonderful and a really magical place to bring up our children, I really, really miss my yoga community. I did eventually find a wonderful yoga teacher, and I was with her for a very long time, just basically going to the weekly yoga classes. And then I felt I really wanted to do a little bit more personal development in yoga. So I ended up doing a 2-year yoga course in the Satyananda tradition, which involved being in the ashram. It involved the residential component, and a couple of the yoginis there were Ayurvedic practitioners. And in one of the evenings, they gave us a couple of lectures about what Ayurveda was, and I was just really struck. I had not really. The only time I'd really come across it was at a Mind, Body and Soul expo that I went to, and there was a little stand there, and there was a whole lot of bottled containers with herbs and whatever. And so I thought, oh, this is a little bit like Chinese medicine, it's all about preparations. However, when they talked about in the course that I was doing, when they talked about Ayurveda and what it was, I was just struck as to how much common sense it was. It was about daily rhythms. It was about how you live your life, how you deal with your senses. And I just thought, and then they pointed out too that it was a sister science to yoga. And I thought, this is just perfect. Mm-hmm. And so I came back from that course. I started teaching yoga in my local community, and I bought a few books, and then I discovered podcasts. And I think the first one I listened to was Myra Lewin's one from Harley-Puli, and I know she's been on your podcast. Mm-hmm. But I was in the kitchen one day and I started listening to one of yours. I'm not sure how I came across it. It was episode 102, and it was about pitta burnout. And as you know, I've got a pitta constitution, even though I'm moving into the vata stage. And it was Victor Briere, I think, Dr. Victor Briere. Mm-hmm. And I was doing the normal pitta thing. I was, probably cooking 4 different things at once. And I was just blown away with this particular man and what he was saying. And I looked up your program, and I realized that I had about 101 other podcasts to listen to. So I've been an avid listener of yours, Colette, for quite some time, and other podcasts on Ayurveda. So yeah, that's how I really discovered it.
Great. So how long ago was it that you were exposed to Ayurveda through yoga?
About 2018. Whilst I was doing the course, 2017, 2018. Yeah. I'd just been vaguely aware of it prior to that, but not really how it was about living your life. Yes.
Well, it's just so fantastic, Julie, that you were introduced to yoga at such a young age through your mom, and that helped you. Like you talked about in your final exams or final year at school, how you were very stressed. And so you must have carried those lessons from yoga throughout your life then.
Yes, I think I have. And I've always, wherever I've gone, even sometimes on holidays, if there happens to be a yoga course around, a casual one that you can get into, I tend to seek them out. Yes.
Yeah. And you mentioned also about that big transition going from city living and full-time working to then having your first child and moving out to the countryside. Those big life transitions can really have an impact, but these principles from both yoga and Ayurveda can really help us during those transitions. We all go through these major transitions in life. And I think what we really need to hold close in those times, or even in turbulent and stressful times, that we really need to hold on to those daily routines, right? And the yoga practice to really bring a sense of grounding as we go through any turmoil of stress and transition, right?
Exactly. It's very, very helpful.
It is, because when all else seems to be turned upside down and maybe emotions are running very high during these stressful times, our daily self-care and routine help us have resilience through those stressful times.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Isn't it great?
Yeah, and I think too that coming from that situation that I was in, there was like about 3 or 4 major life transitions all coming in together. So it was a really huge change.
Yeah. Leaving your job, right? And then having your first child and moving. Yeah. That's a
and leaving my yoga
transition.
Community.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we now understand, of course, we all understand at a certain level the importance of community, but now the studies show that our connection to others is of paramount importance for our health as well. And a yoga community is a great place to find those like-minded people. Right.
Exactly. And it takes time to build up a new community too.
It does.
When you do move from, one situation to another.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that, how you discovered Ayurveda. And now let's talk more about your Ayurvedic journey. So you said that you've studied Ayurveda, you got all the books, and then you're listening to the podcasts. And so tell me how you came about to deciding that you wanted to do a cleanse, because you have cleansed before, correct?
I have, yes.
Yes.
So back in 2018, when I did discover Ayurveda, I bought a few books, and there were some on cleanses, and I'd heard about it from various podcasts. So I did one of those self-managed cleanses, and that was quite successful. And then probably a year later, I did another one. And then I realized that, it's a good idea to do them during the seasonal transition, so spring and autumn. But for the last couple of years, I've sort of started them and got everything organized, but just fizzled out. And I thought, you can't keep doing this, Julie. You really need to bite the bullet. And I had been thinking for quite some time about doing one of your ones. And so finally, this last cleanse, this is the autumn one for me. I know it's spring in the Northern Hemisphere where you are, but for me, it was an autumn cleanse. So I thought, yes, I'll give it a go.
Okay. Yeah. And so we met in March, and then you had your 90-minute consultation with me, and we went through a lot of detail there and talked about everything, right? From the physical to the emotional and so on, and got a real insight into your lifestyle as well, because that was important. How did you find that experience?
I found it was wonderful, Colette, because in these self-managed cleanses that I'd done before, it's not really a one size fits all. I think that's the thing about Ayurveda. It's about really trying to work out what works for you personally. And when you've got somebody like yourself who has got the knowledge and says, well, this is what we want this is what you should be doing, and don't do this, but do this. I just found, I had this really good guidance, and I felt really confident of going into the cleanse that it would be really successful. The other thing for me too is that I really like accountability, so that if I'm working with somebody and we've had a conversation and a chat, I just know that helps me move through, and there's support on the way. So I knew that if I had a question that I could email you, and I knew that there was a lot of support online as well. So right through the cleanse, I accessed, well, there was meditations that you provided. There was yoga classes that I did most mornings, which were just wonderful, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
The videos, the recipes. So I accessed all of that as well. So
yeah. Well, that's what I recall in our consultation, and that's why I really love to connect with each person individually, and get, obviously what's going on health-wise for you, but just to connect so I can get a feel for the person and what they need. And for you, I felt you already had a really good intuition about your body. And so it was important for me to respect that and to listen to you as well, rather than just telling you, what to do. I wanted to be a strategy that we put together, both of us, and that it's really important for me to meet the person where they are. And I felt you already, after going through a lifetime of having this connection with yoga and more recently Ayurveda, you were very much in tune with your body. So that was important for me to tune into your intuitive sense as well. And I know that you're experiencing some heat and some vata, right? Both were going on.
Yes, what was interesting about that was that I do suffer a little bit from acid reflux, and that was still happening. And I remember talking to you and making some changes throughout, and I wouldn't have thought of doing that. It was just through your guidance and advice about changing a few things. I think we were looking at aloe vera in coconut water, and that was what we were doing to start with. And then we had a bit of communication via email, and you said, well, stop that now and try something else, which worked really well. So just the fact that, I could connect with you. And I guess the big insight for me with this too is that I was always very conscious of the fact that I have a strong pitta constitution, but because of the stage of life that I'm in, it's really about accepting the fact that I'm moving into the vata stage. And I think you made me really aware that there was a lot of vata and air and dryness in particular going on, and that I really needed to deal with that. Yeah. And again, with the massages that we had, we changed the oil because that didn't work. Well, it wasn't working for me. And the new suggestion was great. Yes.
Yeah. And because you were in the southern hemisphere, as we mentioned, you were going from summer into autumn, and your weather had shifted from the time of the consultation to the cleanse. So you were experiencing some of that heat at the end of the summer, and then it had shifted into cooler, drier, which then started, activating your vata more. So that's why we had to shift from pitta balancing, and we successfully balanced that. And then as the weather started getting cooler and drier, then we had to shift, like, okay, now we need to move more towards vata balancing because the environment was increasing the vata in your body. And yes, and we tuned in a lot because I remember you were telling me what you were feeling. And then together, we put a plan in place, which was great. And I really want everybody, and I say that to each person in consultation, I want you to listen to your body. If there's a food you don't like, if there's a spice you don't like, you have to tell me, because I don't think therefore it's healing for you. Or if something's feeling off, communication is really important. And so I was really happy you were doing that.
Awesome. And I guess too, with the self-managed cleanses that I'd done in the past, I would have just pushed through because that's what the program suggested. So it's lovely to be able to tailor it to things when things change, then you're able to make those changes that need to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how you're learning. And that's what, I say to people with the cleanse, you're not only cleansing and resetting your body and getting your doses in balance, eliminating toxins and all the rest, but it really is an educational journey because viscerally you're feeling the shifts in your body, and you were feeling that vata increasing, like, I'm experiencing more dryness and more coolness. And, then I was explaining to you, yes, because your weather now is shifted into the vata autumn weather. And this is now, your pitta is now balanced. We managed to balance that successfully. So now we need to transition so that then going forward, you're more aware of that. And you actually said in one of your emails, I think it was, or a post, you said that it was an enlightening experience. You mentioned that awareness you had, you were able to develop more self-awareness around what you consume and how it affected your body and mind.
Absolutely. And I think too just accepting the fact that I am in the vata stage of life, because I've always had this concept, and I've, that my constitution is pitta, and I look back at how I've moved through my life and wherever I am, even now in semi-retirement, I take on leadership roles, and maybe I think the cleanse gave me time to really stop and think, is this what I want to keep on doing? Like, is it time to maybe pull back a bit? And I guess it's about letting go, Colette. Is it time to let certain things go? And I remember we had this lovely conversation, and you said to me, you can give yourself permission just to have fun. Like, there doesn't have to be an outcome. You don't have to learn something about all of this. You can just chill out.
Yeah.
It was really lovely, giving yourself permission.
And that's a very pitta thing. Everything has to have a purpose, but it served you throughout your life. Yes. Because as you said, you've been in such leadership roles, you've been a teacher as well as a mom. And, I talk a lot about that, particularly for people with a high pitta constitution, as you're coming towards, menopause and then moving into the vata stage of life. There's less of that energy there to support that big drive of pitta. And so, as you said, that letting go is really important. And we talked about something that you embraced throughout your life was your creativity. And I talked to you about, this is a perfect time for you to really enjoy more of that creative energy of vata, because your vata was your second dosha, and now you're in the vata stage of life. You're finished your full-time career, your kids are grown up, and now you should enjoy this time. And it's about you. Tell us a little bit more about your creativity, because that has always been there, right?
Yes, it has. And my big thing is music at the moment. In fact, that was a thing that was missing in my life during my career stage, because I was in a very fortunate situation where I was able to go out and be a full-time teacher, and my husband was happy to stay home with the children until they went to school, and then he went off and did some work as well. But yes, it's been a really driven thing. And when I was probably been the last 10 years, I discovered, I play ukulele, but I've also recently taken up the cello. But I realized, having embraced these musical experiences, that was really missing from my life for, a few decades, in fact. And I just really, really love it. And it's not just the the energy that music gives you and the flow that it can give you when you're engaged in it. It's also the community that you become involved with, because I play with a strings group and an orchestra, and I have a little ukulele group, and it's just, the camaraderie is just wonderful, and it's just really nice to hang around with people that share the same interests as you do. So,
absolutely. And especially in our world today, where the technology which has been invented with the goal to bring us closer together is actually driving us further apart. And so with that, a lot of people are spending time on their own, consuming things online or even connecting online. So the fact that you can get together in these local community groups and play music together, it's so important. And as I keep repeating over and over again, because I think it's so important, especially for those with a high vata constitution, is expressing that creative energy is as important as your diet and exercise and mindfulness practices. Because I do really feel strongly that when that creative flow is stopped and when it's cut off, and at some stages in life, let's be honest, it's necessary, right? Life is busy, but I do think it's really important to keep a little bit of that creative energy flowing, allowing yourself to express it, and making time for it. And then when there is more time opens up, that you go into that more. And in this vata stage of life, it's really about showing your true colors and allowing that creativity to flow. So I love that you're getting more into your music now that you have time and expressing yourself more. I'd love to ask you more about this vata stage of life and your experience in that. You mentioned about having to let go of that pitta productivity, that pitta always wanting to be on purpose and to be striving. Talk a little bit more about that.
I think doing this cleanse and having the time just to slow down, and it was actually a perfect time for me because it was in what we call our school holidays. So a lot of the activities that I normally do, like my yoga teaching, had stopped. So I could really, really think about my energy levels. And I think that's what it is. I think it's about a change in your energy levels when you're going from the pitta to the vata stage of life, whatever your constitution is. And what I was really aware of was managing my energy levels and just realizing that I don't have as much energy as I used to have. And so that drive, the mental drive is still there, but the prana, the energy isn't. So you really have to slow down, or otherwise you're going to burn the candle at both ends,
right?
And like I stated initially, my goal is to age gracefully, or try to. So I do want to maintain that health and vitality and well-being as I move through. And it's about acknowledging your energy levels and trying to be in tune with them, I think, for me anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Great advice there. And how was the cleansing process? We talked about what was involved in the cleanse, the 90-minute consultation, but how did you find the process itself? And then post-cleanse, how did you feel?
I really enjoyed the food. I didn't think I would like the tea. Is it called the
CCFT? Yes.
I wasn't that fond of it the first couple of days, but look, honestly, by day 7, I was really into it.
Good.
I really developed a taste for it. I didn't struggle at all with any of the food during the main cleanse. I know you simplify it right down.
Yes.
And I just enjoyed what that was doing to my body. It was just, you don't have to think about it. It's all very simple what you eat. And I tried a few of the recipes that you provide for the post cleanse, and I love the golden milk and a few of the other bits and pieces that I tried as well.
Right.
I think how I've moved through is I am definitely not consuming as much coffee, or hardly any coffee. And that's a drying thing. And the same with alcohol, isn't it? They both dry.
Yes.
So I've had the time to realize that that's precisely what's happening to my body when I consume those sorts of things. So like you said before, it's a learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I've really discovered too is the power of spices, and they're kind of like they're healing. It's not just something to flavor food. They've actually got properties that when you add them to food, they do certain things. So I'm really enjoying. That's a big discovery area for me.
Great.
I've got a lot of learning to do in that area. The other couple of things I guess I want to say is I usually do practice yoga several times a week in the morning, but I wake up and it's the first thing I do, and it's kind of just really cemented. Yes, that's my dinacharya. That's what I need to do. I need to get up and have a drink of water, scrape my tongue, do my yoga, and then I can move on with my day.
Yeah.
So you're setting those kind of habits.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Wonderful to hear. Yeah. And I love that, you're getting into your spices. And that's another creative activity in itself, right? Cooking with spices is a very creative outlet. And you mentioned about the coffee, and oftentimes when people go through the cleanse, they realize, their consumption of coffee, how much they're consuming, and also the effect it's having on their body. Like you said, dehydrating, and it can be very wiring and activate the nervous system. And I love the compromise that you made, which I think is very sensible, because in Ayurveda, we're not about depriving yourself. But you mentioned to me that, look, I'm not going to have it every day, but it's going to be a social thing. So when I have it, it's with friends and it's enjoyable. And I think that's a great way to do it, to have, still have it. Don't deprive yourself, but you're getting out of the habit of it. Sometimes we just get into a habit, and oftentimes we're drinking coffee in the morning. We don't even realize we've had it. We're not paying attention. Whereas when you go out, it's a social activity with friends. You get a nice coffee at a coffee shop, and it's something you can enjoy.
Yeah, you really appreciate it when it's not just there all the time. Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I thought that was a really great way to look at it. And again, we definitely don't want to have any deprivation in Ayurveda. These foods and drinks are about enjoyment, but it's learning how to manage them so that they don't aggravate your system, but you can still have them occasionally and not be affected by them. Wonderful. So, Julie, as we finish up here, is there anything else you wanted to share, first of all? And then any advice or tips that you learned on your journey that you would like to share with the listeners?
I think probably I just found it a really valuable experience, Colette, and I would definitely do it again. I think if anyone is thinking of doing a cleanse like this, I think it's really important to make sure that you can set this time aside so that you do have time to think about your energy levels and prepare the food. There's a lot to be learned from slowing down, but I think the thing that I probably got the most benefit of was the consultation, like the personalization of the little journey that I'm going through, and the fact that there were a few changes that happened, and any questions that I had, they could be dealt with. And I found that really, really valuable. And I guess the main message for me that I got out of this journey is this acceptance of this next stage of life and being more cognizant of my energy levels and how my lifestyle and certain foods that I consume are either contributing in a positive or maybe a negative way. It just magnifies that. It gives you time to think about it and really focus on that. So it's been great.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. It really is a journey of awareness, and you have awareness about not only how food, but also lifestyle and habits affect your body and mind, and then you can make better choices for yourself. And really, I think that tuning in, like you're taking that quiet time in the morning to do your yoga practice, it's the perfect time to tune into your body and mind. It's like, okay, how am I feeling today? What are the qualities that are showing up? Do I feel heavy? Do I feel light? Do I feel acidity? Do I feel cold? It's that tuning in. And then through Ayurveda, you learn very simple ways of making adjustments in your diet and lifestyle to keep you more in balance that day. So that's the lovely thing about it. It's just learning how to manage your body and mind, and being curious daily about what's going on.
And it's not that hard. I mean, the concepts are relatively straightforward and simple, aren't they?
Exactly.
It's not super complicated. You don't have to weigh food or do any of this sort of stuff. I know.
It's just very logical, and it makes sense, which is why we all gravitate to it. Well, yes. Julie, I just have to say thank you again. You're looking wonderful post-cleanse, by the way. You look at your skin is really glowing. I see a lovely glow in your skin and eyes. So you look really great. And, thank you for sharing your experience today. It will really help many listeners. So I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Julie. And if you're interested in having your own Digestive Reset Cleanse experience, the next discounted group cleanse will be in September, October. But in the meantime, you could do a private cleanse. The private cleanse is the same structure. It comes with a 90-minute online consultation. But the benefit of a private cleanse is you get to choose your own dates that work for your schedule, and you have me one-to-one for support. So please click on the link in the show notes to check that out, or visit my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com, and go to the programs page for the private Digestive Reset Cleanse. You'll also find my consultations on there and my daily habits program and my Reset, Restore, Renew program. So lots of information on there. If you haven't already followed or subscribed to the podcast, please do so. And the new weekly episodes will automatically download for you. And come join me on social media. My new Instagram page is Elements of Ayurveda Podcast. And on Facebook, I'm under Elements Healing and Wellbeing. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take good care of yourself. Be well, and bye for now. Slán go fóill.